Welcome to the 1871 podcast, and our special guest, our very special guest for this episode is Royals legend Marcus Hahnemann. So, Marcus, it's great to have you with us. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And an absolute pleasure to speak to you. Obviously, we're going to ask you about the 106 season, your time at Reading, and a few other things as well. But before we speak to you, Marcus, we've been talking about a couple of quizzes that we've been having, a couple of Reading FC quizzes. The winner of our first quiz was Chris Bennett, who just pipped 1871 podcast co-host Johnny Hunt to win that one. There were no actual prizes for winning, just the glory. But as the winner of our first quiz, we thought we'd ask Chris if he wanted to ask a question to Marcus, and he said yes, he'd like to. So, Marcus, if that's okay for you, here's Chris's question for you. He says that the Reading fans memorably used to chant USA to you in your honour. USA, USA, all that sort of stuff. And that was a regular thing, and it kind of also became your nickname at Reading. So Chris's question, what he'd like to know is, what other nicknames have you had in your career, and which one of those nicknames did you like the best?
I think my the oldest nickname I really remember is Chewy. So when I was in college, I grew a mustache, and then obviously like a Star Wars reference, Chewbacca, and that one has stuck with me probably the most. And I still have old friends that from high school or whatever, and college that still call me Chewy. The Sounders goalie coach, he would still, when I came back and played here, he would always call me Chewy, and and half the team. So probably that one. The other one at Fulham, when we moved, we had our firstborn Hunter was the baby, and then Amanda got pregnant. And then Paul Pescisolito goes, "Oh, you have to name him like a good American name." We were thinking of names, and he goes, "You got to call him Boomer." So Austin, who we ended up calling him Austin, obviously. Austin was supposed to be Boomer, and so that was one of my nicknames for a while, especially at Fulham. And then and now our dog, our fearless hunting dog who's scared of guns, is Boomer. So yeah, probably those ones. I think maybe in high school I had a nickname Bam Bam from Flintstones, but I think that's about it.
Yeah. And what was that like when you were at Reading and you could hear that USA chant? How did that make you feel? Did it kind of affect you in any way? Did it make you feel better than you already did, or how did that have an impact on you?
There wasn't. Sorry, before I go there, I think Buddy was another one. So okay. Then the guys, because I used to call everyone Buddy, so everybody used to call me Buddy as well. That was the other one. I'd always be like, "Hey, Buddy," and so that was one of my nicknames. The USA chant was pretty awesome. I mean, I was pretty patriotic. The whole reason me going to England was to get back into the national team. I played a couple of games, and in 1995, after the World Cup in '94, and then we had couldn't get in the team, and Casey Keller, Brad Friedel were over in England. So I did everything in my power to try to figure out how I could get there. And, the MLS was just starting, and it was really good. It was a giant leap for me to go and leave that. My wife had a great job in Colorado. We had a great lifestyle there, kind of outdoor. I was fly fishing. My wife was skiing. I couldn't ski at that time. But I've made up for that since I moved back, since I'm getting 100 days a year in, and we actually sold our house in the city, and we have a place in the mountains, so we can walk, straight from our garage, put our skins on our ski, and and go tour up with the dog in the morning. That's our normal morning lap for us, and then go hit Alpental, one of the ski areas. So making up for lost time, that's for sure. 25 years without skiing is, so I'm trying to make up for that. So there's a, I don't know, it's kind of crazy when you think back of the whole story. And but me trying to get to England, it was all about really getting back to the national team.
Yeah.
And when I got to Fulham, there was no interest in me because I had not been able to get into the team regularly, and Mike Taylor had something to do with that, and the team doing really well, right? And the life of a goalie, right? You play or you don't play a lot of times, and getting your chance, and it was really frustrating, and we almost ended up going home. And you guys know the story really well, but that loan spell, which a lot of people don't know about, I ended up going to Rochdale in November, I want to say, and then couldn't go back there. They couldn't afford to pay me, and Tiana goes, no, if they want you back, they got to pay your full wages, so went back to Fulham, and I was supposed to be playing in a reserve team game, like on a Monday night that nobody really wants to play in, right? But you're like, okay, I get a chance to play. And Jerry Payton calls me up, and he goes, hey, Mike Taylor wants to play in the game tonight. And I'm like, oh, and I knew Gary couldn't make it. Gary Payton's a basketball player in Seattle. Jerry Payton couldn't make it to the game, so I told him I would go and warm Mike up. I was already set to go. Amanda didn't want me home, and Mike had a Northern Ireland game, and so I was trying to figure out, okay, well, I'll just go warm him up and whatever. Well, Reading staff came to watch me play. Alan Pardue, and the rest of the crew, Nicky Hammond, Wally Downs, and Kevin Dillon. I think everybody came, and this is all, I didn't know anything about it. Well, they turn up, there is, and they see Mike Taylor on the team sheet, and they're like, what? They're all disappointed. They're like, wait, Marcus is still here. Why is he here? And then they saw me warming up Mike Taylor, and they're like, huh. So they're watching, my warm up of Mike Taylor, and then we do some shooting, and I hop in the goal. And, Mike goes in, and I take all the balls, and one of the kids wanted to grab all the balls and put them in the bag. And I go, no, just take the bag and run up to the halfway line, and I'll hit you the balls. So I hit, all 10 balls, side volley, perfect, right to this kid. He puts them in the bag. And as Kevin tells me the story, Dylan, he goes, that'll work. Let's go. And so they signed me on the warm up for Mike Taylor, which is kind of interesting when you think of, all these different things that fall into place. And, you think of the team player that I think is really important. And then, the goalkeeper union and backing up our buddies and all those different things, it was, one of the reasons why they signed me, and that was it.
Yeah. Johnny, I've got one more question.
Yeah.
I'll hand over to you. So you came to Reading on loan, and you played in the 2001-2002 promotion season. I think it was a handful of games. And then you joined Reading on a free transfer. Imagine that. I mean, one of the best free transfers Reading have ever made in 2002. But I just wonder, when you came to Reading, Marcus, did you kind of get a sense that something special could happen at Reading when you joined?
Yeah, there was a Costco there. It was amazing. It was like meant to be. Costco's from Seattle. You could get, American peanut butter. I'm like, okay, this is home. And kind of all joking aside, when I was on loan, it was all great. I was driving back to Fulham and most of the time, and we had a great month. It was like, I think it was 8 games in a month. It was that Christmas period. It was a lot of games, it felt like. which was awesome because we were just playing games, which is what it's about. It was amazing, the great team. And then ITV Digital collapsed. And so you don't really know how close we were to coming back to the States with, with my tail tucked in and, going home and, not that whole dream not being possible. And because now all of a sudden all the championship teams and lower league teams weren't getting that little pot of money. So I think it was $1 million that wasn't there. So Reading wanted me that season, but Fulham wouldn't let me go because I needed 3 keepers. And Tigana told me, he goes, no, we need you. And, they either have to buy you or, you can go in the summer. And I'm like, and I told him this could be my chance. And he goes, oh, you'll find something. So then all of a sudden you get to the summer, we're home back in the States for a little bit. I turn on Sky News and I see Fulham sign Edwin van der Sar. And I'm like, oh, great. So Edwin was already there. Sorry. They signed some other keeper. And I'm like, who I've never heard of, somebody from Spain. And I'm like, oh, great. I thought he said I had a job. Now I don't have a job. I'm like, oh God, we got to get over there. Tigana told me that he didn't sign him. It was, someone else at the club signed him. And you're like, oh my gosh, like trying to figure out this whole thing. And, I've got 2 little kids. Are we staying? Are we going? We're going to run out of money pretty quick here. So we got to figure this thing out. And then Fulham were in an Intertoto Cup. And so Edwin's clearance wasn't through. I can't remember the other guy's name. Wasn't through. Mike Taylor was going to play. So he goes, we need you for the bench. So Tigana told me he'll put me on a month-to-month till I find something. And he goes, you can go train with other clubs. Just let the goalkeeper coach know, and we'll go from there. And I was like, okay, maybe this will work. And I went and trained with a couple different teams. Went up to Middlesbrough because I knew Paul Barron really well. He was my in to England in the first place. He was at Villa when I would come over and train every winter during our off season. And so I would sleep on Paul's couch, eat all his food, and go train with those guys. And that was, you just got a little taste of it. Like, okay, I can see where I need to go, how much I need to work, and kind of put those goals. Like, you could set those goals every week. It was just awesome, right? And even when I was gone, I still go, okay, I got to train with David James, Mark Bosnich, and seeing those guys, what they did and how different they were. There's a lot of different ways to do this goalkeeper thing, right? And the different personalities and different warm-ups, but just great guys. And I still had a really good friendship with David James. He was super kind to me when I would come train with those guys, and just had an awesome time. And I'm like, this is, if I could get back here, this would be absolutely incredible. And so just that little taste, and it took Reading a little bit to come through, and with the money, and it wasn't very much money, I can tell you that. And you took a massive pay cut to come, but I think Kevin Dillon goes, you need to, I go, should we come here? Should I buy a house? What do you think? How long, is this going to be? And Kevin goes, you need to buy a house. You're going to be mayor of Reading. That's what Kevin Dillon told me. That was, the staff and everything. It was just awesome. I still haven't been mayor, but
still time.
It's still time. And then I started looking at houses, and after training, I'd meet Amanda and the kids at Costco pretty much every day after practice. We would have lunch down there, and Costco was like our extended family, because at the time Costco had just opened up, and so there was no one in there because it's membership based. So it was really quiet, but they still had all the tills open, and so everyone knew you by name and stuff like that. We'd go grab some lunch, and we go look at houses, and eventually we walked into a house in Pangbourne, and just an awesome little house, and when we went up and looked through the, I drove it a couple of times, and then Amanda came out maybe the next day or whatever. And we walked into one of the kids' room, and they had a Seattle Mariners poster up, from our baseball team. You're like, okay, this is a sign. And then we looked at our phones. We looked at our phones at the exact same time, and you're like, yep, we don't have reception. This is it, because none of our houses ever had reception. So you're like, this is it. And that's how it started. And just an awesome time in my life.
Yeah, Johnny, go on then. Over to you.
Yeah, no, it's lovely to hear you talk, Marcus. When you went into Reading, what was it like going into that change room with the guys? Who did you kind of gel with, or was there kind of strong characters that you were like, who's this? And how are you kind of accepted?
Well, we had it was a little bit weird in the beginning, because we had the goalkeeper I was coming in to replace was everyone's best friend. That's always a little bit difficult, right? And so in the beginning it was a little bit kind of standoffish, and it's different when you're on loan, and then all of a sudden when you come in and sign, then it's like, oh, you could tell that everyone's, a lot of guys are treating you a little bit differently. And then it was I think it was Butler who came up to me, and he actually apologized, Martin Butler. He goes, yeah, sorry for being like a dick, basically, but it wasn't said it somewhat differently. It's not a direct quote, but and you get it, right? And my feelings weren't hurt. It's a difficult job, right? And when you're coming in, you're basically taking someone's position, right? And their friend away, right? Which is a little bit of a bummer, but they're like, yeah, it was real, and when I could come catch a cross and pump a ball to Martin Butler on my side volley, he was happy. So but it did take him a little bit of while to warm up to me. But Graham Murdy I was probably closest with, and still to this day. But it's, you think of the back four, right? Ivar, Nicky Shorey, and Sonko, right? Those guys were always, probably the tightest, right? Because you spend more time together. Yeah. We started doing film, just the back four and the goalkeepers, and then we started to let Harper in, because he was sort of defensively minded, right? And so we were doing extra film sessions that were voluntary just for the defense. And then, you had, Grignard would come as well, and Sidwell. And, that was, and you could tell that there was something special happening with our club, right? And, it definitely had a big impact that we had. What was their name? The sports psychologist guys. It was a Catalyst who came in. Those guys, and they're able to really help out with the part of the game that, I don't know, when we looked at the goal setting and looking at each month and different things like that, and it really took us to the next level, I think. Eventually when Koppel came in and all those different things, but we were there or thereabouts with Pardue, and it was great. And it took us a little bit. It just, that championship is so difficult, right? And it was pretty incredible. And even to think back at those times, it's there was a lot going on, but how close and tight our team was pretty awesome.
Was there much difference the way Alan and Steve did things? Was it kind of just a little bit of a transition from when Alan left and Steve came in, or was it a whole new approach?
Yeah, I mean, they're totally different managers, right? And that's the thing when things aren't going well, right? I mean, the easiest thing to change is the manager, because you get a completely, you change one person, or usually the staff goes as well, but you get a whole different persona as well, right? Pardue was always in your face, and it was, he was pretty emotional, and
Yeah.
and Koppel was exactly the opposite. Koppel was a little bit more like Tigana, who was, really quiet in the changing room, and and different things like that. And remember one time, one of my favorite Tigana stories from Fulham was we were getting our asses kicked at Craven Cottage, and we all came in the into the locker room, and the changing room is super small at Craven Cottage, and Tigana is just sitting there reading a book. He's just reading a book, and everyone's yelling at everybody. Everyone's like, the defenders are yelling at everybody. Chris Coleman, he's hammering everybody. And then, everyone sits down, and Tigana's still reading a book, and everyone's like, the fuck is he doing? Right? Like, this is just reading a book while this is going on. And he goes, what's the problem? He goes, and everyone's like, hey, it's like the forwards aren't doing this, the defenders, like, we don't have it. He goes, what's the problem? He goes, just play. And he starts reading his book again, right? And Pards absolutely loved me, right? He was, he was always, he would tell me I was the greatest goalie ever all the time, and but he was not really in your face all the time. I mean, that's maybe the maybe not the right thing, but he was, just different than Koppel, right? But so we came in the changing room, and I got my Red Bull and my gloves in the goal, and there was, like, I don't know if it was a throw in on the halfway line, so I was out about 30 yards seeing if I was going to get the ball back, maybe, just being an option. The whistle goes, so I just kind of jog back, get my gloves, get my Red Bull, probably open my Red Bull, start drinking it, running back, and I go in, and Pards is fuming, right? He is absolutely fuming. And I walk in, and I'm like, oh shit. He goes, he's like, how did he start? He just goes, buddy, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you're killing us with your stupid side volley? And I was like, oh shit. So I just kind of sneak into my corner, sit down, and he goes, you're killing us with your side volley. You got to throw it out more. And I went, okay, I'll throw it out more. I was like, shit, what happened? It was 0-0 at halftime, I think, or something. And then he goes, and he was ready to come back at me, right? And then he goes, Butler. He goes, when he kicks you the ball, you got to hold it. And I go, I thought I was supposed to kick it, but he was just having a yell up, right, to get us going, because we weren't playing very well, right? Yeah. And Koppel was a lot more measured, and which was, it was different. But he did such a great job of, even in our 107 point run. Or was it 120 or 107? I can't remember. Yeah. He never put any pressure on us, right? It was always like, hey, let's, like, the next game, let's just keep going, right? And I think we even lost the first game or whatever, right? And you're like, oh, here we go, right? We're losing at home, and this is how it's going to start. And just like, yeah, we're just going to keep going, and never put any extra pressure on us. And it was it was awesome.
Yeah, Marcus, I just want to ask you, because we've had Steve Koppel on recently as a guest, and he spoke about you, and he said the thing about you was, like, you hardly ever made a mistake. And I just wondered what it was like for you being part of that team. How did it feel going into every game? Because it was like you expected to win every game. Was that a key part of the success, that sort of mentality that season, the 106 season?
Yeah, well, I'm glad Steve Koppel doesn't have the greatest memory, because either do I. I'd never made any mistakes that I can remember, except for the first Prem game when someone hit a shot through the wall and it bounced up off my chest, and they smashed it in after like 2 minutes. And that was our Premier League debut. That one still haunts me. And we came back and got a draw out of that. If my memory
It's a win, wasn't it?
Serves me.
3-2, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it 3-2? Oh,
Yeah, it's a win, yeah.
oh, it's even better. Okay, I feel much better now. But that's how our team was, right? It was, and I worked my butt off every day, and I was wired so tight. My kids are still probably a disaster because of how tightly I was wound all the time. And I'm still trying to figure out how to be a little bit more calm. But what did Scotty Goldberg? We saw him at the charity match, and he goes, buddy, he goes, no red mist today, please. He goes, don't kill anybody. Because I was wound so tight, but every game mattered, right? And it's crazy. And we went through, and every game, no matter what, we thought we were going to win. And we won some games 3 or 4-0 at home even, and I got man of the match and in one of the games, and my phone was blowing up, and they're like, yeah, you guys win 3-0. They're like, how are you man of the match? That doesn't even make sense. And like, I go, well, I made a couple of one-on-one saves, one off my face. It goes to Nicky Shorey. He plays it to Bobby Convey. They do their normal overlap, and then Kevin Doyle scores, and then we just go on to cruise the game. And it wasn't it was kind of funny, but everyone's like trying to figure out how that was even possible. But my training every day, it was it had great coaches, and Nicky Hahnemann was the goalkeeper coach initially, and then Sal Bippo came in, and obviously it was I had a whole bunch of ideas of how things should be, and so did Sal, and but we had a great goalkeepers union there. It was awesome. And guys even like what, Graham Stack, but even Jamie Young, Jamie Ashdown, all those guys, we had some really good goalkeepers, and Jamie Young is still playing. He was still playing in Australia, and you're like, still killing it down there. And he was at one stage, he was I think he came in as a 16-year-old, 5'11", and never grew again. And everybody's like, hey, you're too small to be a goalie. And I go, well, Jamie, you can kick the ball better than me. Your side volley's better than me. So when you come catch a cross, you just need to make sure you put your team on a counterattack, and they will never hit crosses on you again. But you got to make that your strength. And sure enough, man, he played a long time.
Yeah. Johnny, do you want to come in again? Johnny, you there? Oh, I think Johnny might have frozen. So that you mentioned, Marcus, that first season in the Premier League, and that amazing first game. Gareth Southgate was the Middlesbrough manager that day. 2-0 down, you came back to win 3-2, and that, in some ways that season was as good as the previous season, even though obviously you won the title, and they've got the record, the 106. But that following season as well, you just had that momentum, didn't you? And it just felt like the same mentality, and some great games. What was that like to finally make that progression and take Reading into the Premier League, and then have such a great first season? What was that first season in the Premier League like?
The whole year was surreal, right? I mean, it just, and we played against Premier League teams, right, in the cup games and different things like that. But to go there every week, is a whole new thing. And I remember, we had Middlesbrough with, Gareth Southgate was there. Paul Barron was the goalkeeper coach for that team, and Southgate was at Villa when I got to train with them, right? And all of a sudden, you're playing in the Premier League against these guys who you look up to, and all these different things. It was crazy. And I remember I was like, I'm not trading shirts with anybody. Like, I don't want to seem like we're just happy to be there. And because it was so overwhelming, and you know, there's a couple different ways to deal with stress. Is one is you just have to downplay it and just like, okay, because it is such a huge leap, but you're like, okay, this is just nothing, you know, special. And so I'm like, I'm not trading shirts because this is where I've always wanted to be. But you know, an absolute dream, and to think that, you know, a kid from Seattle, Washington, who, you know, to make it into the Premier League and to be starting every game, and with a team that, you know, we brought up from the championship, and, you know, the history of Reading, and it was slightly overwhelming sometimes. So you have to, you know, like when you think of just those pressures, and then you have the pressures of the fans, and it is pretty daunting. And so the first time I really, we had a couple stories, but I remember we were away at the Emirates, and my dad was over, Amanda and the kids, and so they went to the game. And you know, you're trying to downplay this whole thing, right? Of we're playing in the Premier League, and there's an injury on the far end of the field, and so I run back. So now all of a sudden you're like, okay, I can just relax for a second, right? I don't have to yell at anybody or do anything. And I look up on the far side, they have the team, you know, you got Reading's team and Arsenal's team. You know, I'm at the top, right? Almunia. I'm like, holy shit. And like, it just like, you're like, oh fuck. And you're like, I gotta go get some water. And then I run back to my goal, grab some water. I don't need any Red Bull now because I'm already amped up over the top now. And then I look up into the Reading section, and there's like 2 rows in front of my family, no one's sitting for some reason. And then I see like my kids, they're waving, you know, I see them instantly. And my dad, and you're like, and I always used to give a little thing when we were on camera or something like this to my kids. That was like how I was saying hi to them when I was on TV or in the game or whatever. So they knew I saw them and was saying hi to them. And, but to just be able to like pick out your family in the crowd, you know, and I was like, oh my gosh, like you're playing for even, you know, for everybody. And then to see your family, you're like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing? And I'm like, Sonko, get back here. Sonko's going, why are you yelling at me? You know, like nothing's happening, you know, but I had to get myself back into the game as well. Right. And, you know, yelling and organizing your defense, right, was the one way for myself, and how goalkeepers keep themselves involved in the game, right, and keep yourself tuned in.
Yeah. Johnny, we lost you temporarily, but you're back now. Do you want to come back in? Johnny, yeah, I think you're on mute.
When you're playing at that level, Marcus, when did you guys believe like we belong? You know, and you've got the guys, you know, Shearer and all those, and you're like, we're playing these guys every week. We're not just, you know, and you're competing with them and you're beating some of them. When did that kind of feel we are a Premier team?
Well, I don't know how long into the season that Arsenal game was, but that was the first time I asked for someone's shirt.
Okay.
Because that was one of the things that was like, I don't want to be that fanboy and, you know, running up to Rooney and going, give me your shirt, you know, I'm going to trade your shirt, you know, like before the game's over, you know, be thinking about all this stuff. And, but geez, I mean, I don't even know. I mean, it seems even weird, you know, talking even about it now that, you know, I was playing in the Premier League. It's pretty crazy.
What was like the teams, you know, the team spirit on the pitch was amazing. Like, you know, to watch you guys play. What about some of this off the pitch stuff? If you can say anything that, you know, the how you kind of bonded as a group.
And we definitely had different groups.
Okay.
Right. Within our team. Right. And, you know, me and Convy hung out a lot, right? Because Bobby was here by himself. And so Bobby would come over for dinner and stuff like that. You know, Bobby's a young single kid who, you know, he would come home He'd walk into the mall, then he would come take a nap. And I'm like, Bobby, we're eating at 7, right? And Bobby would always turn up like an hour later, and you're like, we got kids and all this stuff. So he was a complete disaster, right? Didn't quite get it. And then, you know, when you think of the younger group, like Lita, Sonko, those guys were going out, you know, all the time partying, right? And then you had the kids with families, right? And then, you know, Murdy, Brynjar, Ivar, and all the wives. And then, you know, the wives started to do the, oh my gosh, what was it called? The
Foundation, wasn't it? They did.
Yeah. What did they call themselves again? I don't remember. That's embarrassing. My memory is not that great. Yeah, but they ended up, so a lot of the different things, because the wives were so involved with that.
Yeah.
You end up, you know, we ended up pretty close with the main wives from that, and, you know, doing things, you know, more along those lines, right? Where the married guys would always hang out, and you know, the younger guys, when they were going out clubbing, you're like, okay, see you later. I don't really need to go do that. They weren't playing any Tool, Slipknot, or Machine Head at any of those places, and I didn't really need to go there. But we would go out occasionally, you know, obviously as a team, and do stuff. But you know, mainly you become friends with who have the same interest as you. So we'd play lots of golf together, and you know, me and Mertz would play tons of golf.
Yeah.
And Steve just let you be. I imagine he just treats you as that. He lets you get on with it and respects what you do. Is that him as a manager?
Yeah, I mean, like everything, there's never an issue, right? With anything until there's an issue, right? And you know, guys were smart. You know, they were, you know, we'd go get buggies when we go play golf or whatever, you know, and you know, we would go to the pub on a Thursday or Friday night. Usually on a Friday night, but on a Thursday night, and people are like, "Aren't you worried you're going to the pub?" I go, "Look, we're going to the pub. Like I'm having a beer, you know, with my family. It's not like I'm going out to the club and, you know, till 3 a.m, right?" And but it just leaves yourself open for, you know, for obviously, if things don't go well on a Saturday, they're like, "Well, I saw him at the pub," right? And you're like, well, you know, that's how it all starts.
Yeah.
But if you play well, right?
No one cares.
Yeah. Yeah. I was partying with them the night before too, and we still won, right? I mean, that's how it is. But which was really awesome when we went back to the charity match last year, to see Leroy Lita walking around, and he had his cute little daughter in his little baby Bjorn on his chest, walking around after the game. And you're like, you know, and all these kids, the young kids who we had on the team, who are now having kids.
Yeah.
It was pretty incredible, you know, to see everybody running around with kids now. And, you know, that was us. And, you know, Glenn Little and the Murdys at the time, right?
Yeah.
Who had, I think they ended up, they had Freya. You know, that's how that all started, right? But we didn't have a lot of kids at the time, right, on the team. So it was just a little bit different.
Yeah,
Must be especially being back.
Oh, Johnny,
Sorry, Mark.
Jump in a sec, but I just want to ask this to Marcus. So you mentioned the Legends game that you came back for last year, and obviously you fall within that category for Reading fans, a legend, that whole team. So I don't know. My question really isn't, do you feel like a Reading legend, but what do you feel like you contributed? Because you know, you talked about that game at Arsenal and it was a little bit overwhelming, and then you thought, let's get my head back in the game. But when you look back at your time at Reading, how do you feel about what you contributed towards that success?
Well, how do I feel? Well, I mean, I'm proud of what we accomplished, right? At the same time, disappointed with not being able to stay in the league, not being able to, and then, when we got relegated, I had no desire to go anywhere else, right? I didn't look to leave. And, the team stepped up and they're like, look, we want to give you guys, all our contracts were set to reduce back to championship wages. But they kept us on, better money because they really wanted to, make a push. And, they knew us, and, keeping that squad intact, was the main thing. And right, losing Sidwell was the one of the worst thing that happened to our team. The year before, right? Chelsea coming in for him, and and that was a massive setback. And one, you lose a good player, but all of a sudden everything was changing, right? Sidwell ended up, I think it was like 45 grand a week, right? Which just blew our wages out of the water. And then that created that conflict in our team, right? Where everybody was like, this is bullshit. I should be on more money, as well. And that was the downfall probably of our team, because you lose that player, but also, everybody was like, oh, I gotta, maybe this isn't the spot for me. Right. Which, where money ruins everything. And, that was probably the downfall. Maybe not the downfall is the wrong word, but the one thing that I was really disappointed about, that we weren't able to keep that team together.
Yeah, Johnny, I've got one more question, and then coming after that, Marcus, you talked about your ambition to play for the USA, and you did. So you won I think you won the CONCACAF Gold Cup, was it, in 2005? You selected for the World Cup squads in 2006, 2010. So that was kind of mission accomplished, but obviously you were on the bench. How did you feel that you'd kind of done well enough to get to a point where you got selected to represent your country at a World Cup, but then you don't get to play?
Well, not playing, right? That's what it's about, right? Is you want to play, and being able to go and do all that stuff. And back at Casey Keller, me and Casey are still tight to this day. I see him, we live in the same area, snowboarding with him yesterday, or I was skiing, he was snowboarding. But not being able to play as much as I hope for, that's always a disappointment. And I only had 9 caps for the national team. That's kind of a disappointment, right? When I see some of these jokers who've got 50, and you're like, that guy's terrible. How does he have 50 caps? It's kind of frustrating a little bit, but that just is what it is, right? And as a goalkeeper, you're like, it just kind of happens, right? But more importantly, I did beat Casey in a snowboarding race 2 weekends ago. So that is, and Casey's like, oh, I'm not very competitive. And he goes, we already had our competition. And I'm like, no, it's still going. It's still going.
Johnny, back over
and I'm a skier. And
yeah.
I'm a skier too. So I beat him snowboarding. So that was that great game. But I've been practicing sneakily on the this year, because I knew we were going to go into this, one of the local races here. And our buddy who runs it says, you guys got to come do it. And so I've been practicing a lot this year on my snowboarding skills. So that paid off. So
yeah. Johnny,
you haven't lost your competitive edge then, Marcus. Everything you do, it's challenge.
Well, I try not to, because that got me in trouble when they wanted me to play over 40s when I retired, and play for and you're like, man, I'm not training. And then, but I was playing on the field, right? So it doesn't matter, right? you're like, okay, it's all different. And, but then all of a sudden you're like, you get really competitive and you're like, what am I doing? I'm not training. I'm not doing this stuff. So it's like, you got to pick and choose, what you're doing now. And, I started, flying when I was at Wolves, and I got a commercial flying job. This will be my third season flying Beaver float planes in the Seattle area. And, just absolutely love it. You got to figure out what you want to do. And, I love skiing, and I get probably, 100 days a year. And, we live really at the mountain where, at our back door, there's a little resort, and then 3-minute drive, you're at one of the greatest places, a lot of backcountry stuff. And, it's pretty incredible. And, but yes, competitiveness is, I'm trying to get that out of my system, because I was really wound overly tight, I'll say, on a lot of things. And some things are just fun and just a hobby, and you try to go out and have as much fun as possible.
That when you went over for the Legends game, how was that for you? Like, probably some of the guys you hadn't seen for years. And did that game get competitive? Because you've also got the younger guys a few years after.
Yeah. So I hadn't played in goal for 2 years, and my body hurts when I don't want to hit the ground. And I still coach, so I'm like somewhat fit, but I'm not diving around. And and I let in some horrendous goals in that game. And that part, I knew what was going to happen, right? As you're going over there, you're like, man, I don't know if I want to step in that goal and be really shitty. And because, like, okay, I can still catch the ball and all those things, but the reason why I was good is because I trained my butt off.
Yeah.
I did, weights, was riding my bike 3 or 4 times a week just to stay fit. And now all of a sudden, I'm 265 pounds, and now I got to try diving around and moving, and, didn't want to get injured, and, you name it, right? You go down the whole list, but we almost didn't come.
Okay.
You're like, I don't know if I want to go play in goal. My body hurt. And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to suck it up because it's going to be awesome. I got to go see the guys. Super busy. Our flying season was starting. And I don't know if I'm going to go because I don't want to miss out on, once you miss like our ground school and a lot of things that start the season, right? All of a sudden, and I was kind of one of the newer pilots. It was only really my second year, and I started halfway through that I go, look, this has been my dream for forever, and I don't want to screw up my current dream for something that I've already had.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but our kids were like, you guys have to go. And so we did it in like a 4-day trip. My wife had a whole bunch of stuff going on, and she does commercial real estate here in Seattle, and so we ended up Thursday through Sunday. It was way too short. And our friends heard that we didn't go up to Wolverhampton to see them, and we didn't see a lot of the people. They were kind of pissed, and we knew that was going to happen too, because you really need 2 weeks, really. And but that was the time we had, and then going back and seeing the guys, and I really underestimated how much the fans appreciated us coming back. I mean, when I figured, okay, there's going to be 100 people in the stadium, and are we even doing it in the stadium? And where I figured we're going to be at the training ground, right? And there's going to be 3 people and their dog, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not really interested. And to see the stadium, like, it seemed like it was sold out for the game. It was, I mean, my mind was blown. I couldn't believe it. And our fans are like, this is the best thing we've seen all year. It's been,
it actually was. Last season was so bad.
Which is pretty incredible. But I had no idea and you almost don't know like the impact that we had. You could see that many people came out, and then the group of guys that you got to see again, and then seeing, you know, um, Doyle's, the Hunts, Leroy Lita, song with kids. You're like, this is incredible. The whole thing, how the roles kind of reversed a little bit, and how disappointed everybody was that we didn't bring our kids. That was also a bummer, right? Would have been great for our kids to see, but Hunter was just graduating, and all those different things. We just couldn't. And then Austin, my youngest, they're 24 and 22 now, and Austin's in his flight school, so he should be getting his commercial like this month. He should be getting ready for his test, and we just couldn't. They couldn't miss school.
Yeah.
It's just really, really difficult at that time. So I wish, that was probably the one disappointment, that the boys couldn't come with us.
It was a special time for all of us, wasn't it, Mark? I was there. I actually got to meet you in the pub, in the hotel afterwards, and it was just like, for us, it was such a great time as a Reading fan's life, and I'm sure for you guys, being part of something so special, and
Yeah.
It means the world to us. So I'm sure it does you, because it was a bond, wasn't it? We had that bond between, which we haven't got at the minute.
Yeah, it was. I mean, everything worked so well, and when people ask us where home was in England, and we always say Reading, right? Because they're like, oh, really? Like, well, you played a couple different teams. I go, yeah, but I was at Reading for 8 years. We had our house there, and when we moved to Wolverhampton, we kept our house because we were like, no, we're going to end up back in Reading. Like, that was the plan, and then our house was empty, and the kids are playing sports, and then so you just can't get back. So after a couple of years, or a year, we ended up selling it because we never made it back. And I'm paying somebody to live in my house, basically. I had a buddy who stayed in there a couple nights a week because he lived up north, was working at the local bike shop in Pangbourne, and we're like, we should just sell this, and we got a crazy offer, so that's how that worked.
Yeah, Marcus, I just want to ask you, you kind of touched on it when you talked about the Legends game and how much it meant to Reading at that time, the Reading fans. What do you think when you sort of see what's going on with Reading at the moment, the 6-point deduction that we've had this week? Is that sad for you to see that's happened, or how do you feel about it?
100%, right? And it's when you talk about, there's that little disconnect between the team now and the fans and all that stuff. It's really disappointing, to see. And one of the things that I was kind of disappointed with when we went back is, like, didn't see really any of the current team, or all that stuff too, right? That would have been really fun to see, and kind of to connect it all, right? And my college team has been going through a lot of this, and here, obviously in the States, the college teams, that's a big deal, right? And we had a coach that was kind of a jerk, and who came in after my coach, somehow got fired from that job, where he was the one who brought that program up to nothing, and they fire my old coach, and all of a sudden everyone's like, no, I don't want any involvement. And we're like, we're still giving money to the school and all these different things. And then my oldest tried to walk onto the team and go there, and it's a private school, so it's super expensive, and all these different things. And he got treated like crap when he went there. And you're like, I don't understand the disconnect, like why everybody, this team should be, like, the history should be about the old players, the club's history, the ups and downs, all these different things. And nobody wants to lose, but everybody should be together. And we had some of this with the Sounders as well when I came back. And with the Sounders, there was the old NASL from the 70s, and it folded in 83. And then when I came to the Sounders in 94, there was before the MLS, and then the MLS started, and Sounders didn't have a team, and they kind of stuck with that. They were playing in the USL then, and then the Sounders got an MLS team, and then Casey came back and was going to play, and then everything after that point was, I was like, Casey, how long you playing? How do I time this to get back? And so that Everton was a stopgap really for me to come back to Seattle. And, I took no money to go to Everton, and I had an option to leave in January and, talk to David Moyes and Chris Woods there, who are amazing people. And they're like, look, what do you want? I go, I want to be able to go back in January. So they're like, okay. And David Moyes actually said, he goes, well, we're not really paying you anything anyway, so let's just do a mutual option. And the Sounders never came in for me, and so that was also really disappointing. And then came back, we retired, and 2012, and moved back to the States, and we were trying to figure out where we're going to live, and are we going to live in our cabin, which is 85 miles from Seattle, or do we kick our renters out of our rental house? And Bellevue, and the kids really wanted to play sports, and so all the sports are in the city, and so we were like, okay, let's move back into the city, and then we'll have our cabin as our cabin, and we'll go from there. And then it's probably September, right around September. It's right before the transfer deadline, and Adrian Henauer, who owns the Sounders, calls me up, and he goes, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I'm at a garage sale buying a barbecue." Like, why? And he goes, "What?" He goes, "We probably could have gotten you a deal on a barbecue." And I'm like, okay, but he goes, "No, like, where are you? Are you on the east side of the mountains or the west side?" I go, "West side." He goes, "Great. You still want to play?" I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, "Well, we figured out how we can, get you, and it's not going to cost us a ton of money. You still want to play?" I'm like, "For who?" And he goes, "For us." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course." So I go, "But maybe I should train with Tommy for a day and see where I'm at," because I hadn't played all summer, right? And when we were up at in Whitchurch, near just north of Wolverhampton, when I was at Everton that year, when I was training with the kids in the backyard, because there was a couple things, like we came back, and my agent called me up, and he goes, "There's a huge team interested. You want to?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm on my way. I'm already driving there, right? If that happens. And so I was training with the kids in the backyard. That was it. And so, went with Tommy and for a day, and I'm like, okay, I can still do this. And then ended up playing another 4 years with the Sounders. And that was, it's where my professional career started. It's my hometown, all these different things, which was really incredible. Albeit, I should have been playing way more because I was way better than the clowns they had. But that's life, right? But I got to play in some of the Open Cup games, and I had a really good experience, but didn't really like the head coach at all, which that was a problem, and because it kind of left a really bitter taste in my mouth, playing for somebody who was who didn't like me. And every team I played on up to that point, the coaches, no matter how crazy they were, loved me, right? And to have something like that, and then you go in the stadium, and they had like all the MLS posters up, like from where they won championships, and they always put the years they won the championships. Well, when I was on the old Sounders, none of those posters were up, and that history wasn't acknowledged, which was I felt disrespected, and because all you want is to have some involvement, right? And so our college teams now trying to get the old players back in, and the team that I had, we won a national championship, and they never bought us rings, which is a US tradition, right? And 30 years later we might get a ring, right? Which is crazy, right? That it's even taken this long. You seem just disrespected by the whole thing. And you want to feel connection, right? And I remember Alan Hinton was my first pro coach, and when I was up at Wolverhampton, he went up there to go visit, and he was like not sure how he's going to be received he went in there, and Alan told me they treated him like royalty coming in there, and as players, you want to be remembered, right, for what you did, and because that's our life, right? That was, we spend and I mean, granted, you're not sacrificing that much when you're making tons of money, right? I mean, but that's not what it's about. That's not what people remember, right? You remember your team, right? That's it. And you want to have those memories, right? And there shouldn't be a disconnect, right? It should be how you get all the players in and all those different things. And I know this is a long way to because I'm really good at making a short story really long because I ramble. You mentioned the 6-point deduction, and it's it really sucks, right? Because the players are being punished right now for something, and I don't know why, or I'm for irregularities in their bookkeeping or whatever it is, and I don't know why that even matters to the current players, but when you look at it, you're like, it's only 2 wins, right? So the players can write this, and it fairly easily, and but I mean, draws don't help. When you're looking at that, right? You got to pick up some wins, and it's just difficult though, because when you have these outside pressures of things, and how emotional us athletes are, right? It's like, any little thing, right, that gets in your way of success, and now it seems like somebody else is punishing you for other things, and it seems like the whole world's against you, which normally half the people there are always against you anyway, right? But it seems like when everyone is against you, then it's and you have these outside influences deducting points and all those things, it sometimes seems really daunting. But at the end of the day, it's just 2 wins, and then you're back at it.
Yeah, Johnny, I'm going to let you come in for the last question, because we've kept Marcus long enough.
I know. It's just so great to speak to you, Marcus. It really is. What if you could get one highlight of your time at Reading, or one memory that sticks out for you?
There are so many great ones. So I got 2 for you. Okay. I'll tell you, my first day at training, we were training at the cricket grounds, and we turn up, and I've got some of my own training gear, and but they come in with the all the gear, and they just dump it on the floor, and everyone's just picking out their gear. I'm like, where are we? Like, we don't have our own gear. Like, what is happening? This is crazy. It looks like I'm doing my own laundry. And then we got up on the pitch, and I remember, and this might have been actually from the maybe this was from my loan spell that I remember, but I think it was like one of the that must have been the loan spell, because it was the first day of training, and it was like a Friday. You're supposed to be playing on Saturday, type thing, and so you're like, okay, how, like, and Pardue, we set up the team, and he goes, this is how we're going to kick. We're going to kick to the right side. And so Pards is standing, like on the halfway line or whatever. And he goes, we're going to kick to the right side. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, do you want it out of my hands or off the ground? And he goes, what? And he goes like, I don't care. And I go, okay, I'll hit out of my hands first. And so I pump a side volley, and it goes like 20 yards over Pards' head. And he's like, and everyone starts laughing. I go, I could take a bit off if you want. and everybody was cracking up. And that was my first day of training, and Mertz was laughing. We brought that up over when we were back there, how funny that was. And what a great day. And then you know, probably, you know, the highlights, when you think of Reading, it was, where were we? We're not, was it Leicester? When we sealed promotion?
Yeah.
Was it Leicester? I mean, that day was super special, and Medeski came, you know, was out on the pitch, and you saw what it meant to him, and you know, everybody going crazy, and then the, you know, to top it off, when we, you know, we won the championship, and the at home, and the, you know, the pitch was invaded, and I still have a picture up, and ironically, there was a fan that sent me a whole bunch of stuff to sign. You know, it's like, can you sign some stuff? And they sent this picture of me and my family, you know, up in the director's box with everybody on the field below. And, you know, it's probably probably one of the best days of my life.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. Marcus, it's been absolutely fantastic to speak to you. Real pleasure, real honor. So just want to say a big thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I'll show you my this is our ski chalet. So this is our city house now.
Wow. Can't be bad.
So that's the
It's not quite like
that's the
Reading, is it?
Yeah.
it's slightly different.
Wow, that's amazing.
Slightly different.
Reading's a bit closer to ground level, isn't it? I think than where Marcus is.
Yeah, so
That's amazing.
this isn't, yeah, it's not the worst spot in the world, that's for sure. And we're 30 minutes into Seattle, 40 minutes into Seattle from here. So
yeah,
this is our city house, and our cabin's, you know, a little bit farther out. And
yeah.
This is it.
Well, thanks ever so much. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been great. Bringing up some memories. I'm getting a little emotional here. Talking about all these old cool memories, which seemed like a lifetime ago. But I really appreciate you guys having me on, and just remind the guys it's just 2 wins.